Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Nina from the Forgotten Bookshop Girl, and today I'm going to take you in my kitchen and we're going to coffee stain some papers together. I thought I could just show you my method of coffee staining papers, and that would just be the very simple coffee stain papers. I know I've got different versions or different varieties in my shop. I thought it might be an idea to just start off with the very basic coffee stained papers. Just a word of warning, coffee staining papers isn't a very glamorous business. So you will find a plastic covered kitchen table and probably a lot of mess. I haven't quite worked out the best way of setting up my camera in the kitchen, so please bear with me. I will be looking at better ways of doing so, as I intend to do more coffee staining DIYs in my kitchen. With all the coffee and all the mess, I seriously can't do it here in my studio. Yeah, so let's get into the kitchen and get started. So we'll see if this is going to work. This is actually take 3 because the other 2 were too dark. So I'll try again. This seems to be the best angle and the best camera setup I can do for now. I have to think of something that is better. But here we are in my kitchen. I had to move my table closer to the window and I have to keep an eye on the light because the light is changing, which means that the phone is is changing again. I have to make sure that it's not too dark and it's not too light. So just bear with me on this one. This is the first kitchen video, so obviously I need to get better at this. Anyway, I thought I'd get started by just showing you this really old saucepan I'm using. I've just boiled up another solution of the coffee grounds. Basically, I usually wait until I've got about, I don't know, half. I've kind of collected enough coffee grounds to cover, to have at least like 1/3 or half. Depends on how much coffee is being drunk in this household, because you can only keep the coffee grounds for so long. I've boiled it. I tend to boil it for about, I don't know, 10 minutes. And once it has cooled down, I'll pour it. Let's see if that works. Just in a jar like that. You can still, hopefully, no, oh yeah. So just about, you can see the coffee grounds in here. I tend to use the coffee grounds a few times, so I might boil them up for about 3 to 4 times, and every time I do it, the solution is getting a little bit lighter. So this is how I also get my various kind of shades of coffee stain papers. Then obviously I have the printer paper. This is my kitchen table, as I said. I have to cover it in plastic because yeah, it's just easier to keep it clean, and I don't want to I don't want the coffee to soak into the table surface. I've got newspapers on the floor because it will run down over the edge of the table. Yeah, I have to keep checking the light, so I do apologize if this is a bit I don't know, a bit messy, but let's just see. I was really hoping that my microphone cable isn't hanging into the image. Okay, so I'm using a brush. I've tried the kind of soaking the papers in a tray. You have a tray and then you fill it with you know, the coffee solution, and then you put the papers in. I've tried using a sponge, but for me, I like this version best. There's nothing wrong with the other versions at all. It's just the one I prefer. And then, as you can see, I am more or less painting the papers. I'm trying not to use too much of the coffee, partly because I don't want it to run off the table. I mean, it will, but I don't want you know, a lot of coffee to run off the table, because it just creates a huge mess. And also, you know, the papers will dry quicker. You just want them nicely stained, but they don't have to have a proper bath on here. Okay, and once I've done one side, I'll just wait for a bit. Obviously, I'm double checking that I haven't missed any corners. And then I'm just going to let it sit here for a few minutes. Basically, I want the paper to soak up the coffee. So we'll be back in a moment. So here we are again. You might probably ask me for how long I usually leave it. It depends, maybe 5 minutes. Just now I was just doing something else, so I left it for a bit longer. But basically you can see that none of the puddles are left. I'm just waiting until it's kind of like nicely soaked up all the coffee. And then I do apologize if my microphone cable is hanging into the image. I haven't quite worked out how to do it. Hang on, I've actually got one idea. Okay, so next I'll just turn the paper around. You have to be careful, because obviously the paper is wet and can tear more easily. You'll probably notice some darker stains over here, but that's just due to the fact that I had some coffee stains on the plastic. Try to make sure that the paper is nice and flat, and then I go back and just basically just paint the second side. Again, I'm trying to make sure that I don't get too much coffee onto the back page or the back side of the sheet of paper, and then I'll just let it, basically I'm doing the same thing. I'm just going to wait until kind of like these puddles disappear, or I feel, you know, it has soaked up enough water. Obviously, because it's already wet, it won't soak up all of the coffee that is on top. So but still I'm going to wait for a little bit. Our light is changing. That always makes things really difficult when the sun comes out. So please just bear with me. Just bear with me. And we're going to wait for a minute anyway before we can move on with these papers. Okay, let's see if this works. You can see the pattern of my, I just drew that curtain across my kitchen window to try and work with the sunlight. Let's hope this is going to work. So anyway, the paper is okay to be taken off, and I've created something that is a very simple, boring drying rack. Also, oh yeah, I forgot to mention that if it's of any interest, the plastic that I'm using is, those are two of the blue bin bags we get. It's for paper recycling. I just cut it open and it just fits perfectly across my kitchen table. So that's the plastic I'm using. Yeah, I'm very aware of, you know, trying to reduce the plastic I do use. So at least I'm trying to kind of use something that I already have. So I'm not buying plastic particularly to to cover my table, and also you can wipe it clean and use it. So I'm only changing it if it's like really horrible and it just needs to be changed. Okay, so you have to be really careful now because it's even wetter, and then you just pick it up. Okay, so I have got a narrow box that I've just covered in plastic. Okay, one of those plastic bags goes on top, and then I'm just laying the paper across, one next to the other. I've got newspaper underneath so that they can dry, and once they are kind of the papers no longer drip, I mean these are not too bad, then I put them onto, you know, somewhere else. So I've got kind of like a flow of papers on the table, papers on the box, and then they go again somewhere else. Then once they're dry, I don't actually think I've got any dried papers before they go, you know, when they're still quite crinkly. Let me have a look. No, so I don't have any kind of freshly dried paper, but this is probably, I don't know, the best example. Usually they're quite crinkly, and so the next stage, or the next thing I do, I used to iron all of them. But then once my old iron stopped working, and I still had to flatten paper, so I thought, what else could I do? So I just put them under a box, one of those wooden vegetable boxes that you can get when you go to the market and you know, buy fruit and veg, and put lots of heavy books into that box. And they just had a stack of freshly dried papers, put it on the kitchen floor, obviously on the clean kitchen floor, and then put the box with the heavy books on top, and that works perfectly. And I also prefer the surface of the paper that hasn't been ironed, because when paper gets ironed, it has a very smooth, almost slightly glossy finish, which might be easier to write on. So that's something you can try, you know, iron some paper, not too hot, of course, you don't want to set it on fire, and just leave other paper, I don't know, drying, flattening in a different way, and just see what sort of surface you prefer. I actually really like this, but again, as I said, you might find it easier to write on the very smooth surface. So mine no longer get ironed, but flattened under books. I put all of these up to dry, and then we'll be going back into my studio, and then we'll have a look at the dried papers, obviously once they have dried. So we're back in my studio, and I do hope you got something out of watching my process of coffee staining papers. As I said, there are lots of ways of coffee staining papers. This is the way I do it. We're going to have a look at the dried papers in a minute. I'm going to turn the camera around because that will make it easier for you to have a look. And yeah, so I'll have a look at all the papers in my shop, and then look for which one I'm going to do next. If you would like to find out how I am creating a specific kind of coffee stained variety of papers, just let me know, just put it into the comments below, and I can pick that one next. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the papers. So as you can see, these are just kind of quite a light colouring of coffee, I would say. It really depends on the solution and how intense the colour is, but this is, I would say, kind of like the normal shades, maybe on the lighter side of the normal shades. Okay, then I'll say bye for now, and I hope to see you very soon.